Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this Wednesday afternoon. I'm Veronica Conran, and I am the new digital content producer for Borderlands Theater. I'm super grateful to be a part of the Borderlands family and the narrative that they work so hard to voice. We're really excited to have Zarco back again for his second part in this masquero Live series. I love the last episode of it, and I'm really excited for everyone to see today's performance. Before I introduce our very special artists, I wanted to make a few really quick statements. Right now, it feels like a difficult time to present art in any form. So I want to sincerely thank everyone for tuning in today and just taking 30 minutes out of your day for yourselves and your children and to enjoy some art medicine. Borderlands Theater stands alongside the Black Lives Matter movement with our fellow members of the Black, Indigenous, people of color community, and we advocate the demilitarization and defunding of police across the country. We hope for and encourage putting positive energy into personal healing right now and healing of our communities. And we want to remain united with each other as we move through this revolution together. Borderlands Theater is also a nonprofit organization that focuses strongly on community. So if you would like to and are able to make a donation to the theater, you can do so at our Venmo. It's at Borderlands Theater, and we'll have a little link at the end of this performance that you can check out. And if you're happy to help us, we love that. Yeah, and we were having a Q&A after this episode, so if you can stick around, think of questions as you're watching Zarco, and if you get any ideas or you want to send us a message, please feel free to just throw it in our Facebook Live messages and YouTube messages, and we'll pull some questions that we feel like are relevant to the performance. Okay, without further ado, this Arizona native is an incredible visual and performing artist. He's a musician and a sculptor, and his characters that he's created are extremely entertaining, and they feel like home, and they tell stories that promote positivity for our youth and adults. So please welcome Zarco Guerrero.
Hey everybody, good afternoon. Buenas tardes, how's everybody doing out there? Thank you, Veronica, for that wonderful introduction, especially the fact that you mentioned about healing. And on one of the old mantras of the Chicano movement is La Cultura Cura, culture heals. And I firmly believe that. And our nonprofit organization, Culture Coalition, as well as our partners, Borderland Theater, we believe that we need our art forms, whatever they may be, in order to heal our community, use our art as medicine so that we can find our identity. I affirm our identity, and in doing so, we regain our dignity, because to decolonize is to dignify. So last time I took you on a little trip to my studio, I talked about wood carving. I showed you some of the materials that I use for carving. I talked about the wood and a little bit about the process. And right now I'd like to introduce you to another variety of materials that I use in my mask making specifically for theater. And these are what I call the invisible mask. I call them invisible because they tend to disappear on the face. And in doing so, they help the actor disappear behind the mask and bring the mask to life. So that's what I want to talk about. But right now I'm going to introduce you to these two materials that I use that you can buy at Michael's or order online. And the first one is this stuff here. It's called Plaster Bandage. It's also known by other names such as Paris Craft. And you can get this in a lot of art stores, including at Michael's. And when you open it up, it looks like this, and it's simply bandage that's permeated with plaster. So when you dip it in the water, as soon as you take it out, it starts to dry immediately and glues to itself. So here's a little example of a mask that one of my students made. This is his face, Eric. This was made from a mold made on his face. And once we have the mold of his face, we applied the plaster bandage in strips and applied it to the mold. And so when the plaster bandage dries, it's able to come off the mold. And when he puts it on his face, it fits perfectly. It's form-fitting because remember, it's covering the bone structures of his face and fits perfectly on the face, making a mask that's extremely comfortable and easy to use. So once I get it to this point, I cast the face, then I add a layer of this wonderful product I talked to you about before. It's called Creative Paper Clay. Now this is a clay, feels like clay, acts like clay, but it's better than clay made from the earth because it's made out of paper. Therefore, it's very easy to model. It's easy to carve once it's dry. And the most amazing thing about it is that wet paper clay will stick to dry paper clay, which is unbelievable. So I'm going to do a little demonstration on I'm making some masks today, and I'll show you here. I have a few tiny masks made out of plaster bandage, and I began to decorate them in paper clay. Some of these already have features. So what I wanted to do is actually show you some of the process in adding the paper clay and modeling in order to create expressions on the face. So here you go. I got some paper clay here. Basically what I do, I just need a little bit of paper clay and a little bit of water. I don't want to get the paper clay too wet. I just want to wet it a little. You can see how this one already has lips. But I'm going to add another pair of lips right here, make it a little bit more expressive. And of course, I'm going to try to make it look easy. And it is easy, but it's easy because, got to remember, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've made hundreds, if not thousands, of masks. So usually I like to model with two hands, 2 fingers, right? And you can see how the paper clay sticks readily to the plaster bandage. So the nose I already carved. Now I'm going to add a little bit more expressive lips. And the tools I use more than anything else is a tool like this. That's really all I need to do my modeling. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a line here to acknowledge the lips. And you're going to see how fun this is when creating the mask, because with just a little cut in the mouth like that, it already has a personality, right? So that could be turned into a big smile, right? Which is the curve of the line, or it could be made into a frown, right? By frowning the mouth down. So let's see if we can do a real desperate frown here, and you see that not only do I use the paper clay, but I also use the play of light and shadow on the mask. So I'm always moving it into the light to see the shadows that are cast. And then, of course, that helps me make the shape that I want. And then again, I use my thumbs. I use my fingers as much as possible, and only use the tool when I need it. So see, there you go. We have these kind of more of a frown. I'm going to emphasize that by carving out this part here. And then I'm just going to draw a little bit with my tool, getting the shape that I want here. Okay, so there you can see I got a whole new pair of lips there. I already have the eyes, but what I'm going to add a little bit to these eyes so you can see the magic, what happens when I open the eyes on the mask. See, I got the clay a little bit too wet, so it's sticking to my fingers. So I have the eyeballs already put in there. I'm going to add a little bit more clay, kind of make some bulging eyeballs. Balinese love bulging eyebrows. And so I adopted kind of that idea by living in Bali. I love Bali. I love their mask making. The masks are so expressive and so exaggerated. And that's what makes a mask great. You have the freedom to exaggerate and to make a caricature out of the character that you're creating. So there I add a little bit more clay. I'm going to emphasize the eyeballs there a little bit by acknowledging the what do you call it? The eyebrows. And then I'm just going to take a little brush here. Whoop. Make a couple little holes there. And you can already see how that mask is coming to life just by the little bit of work that I did right there. Okay, and the paper clay is already starting to stiffen up a little bit, but I have enough time to finish the mask if I wanted to. Okay, now I'm going to take another mask here, and you can see where I got kind of the sleepy, swollen eyes on this mask. Well, what I'm going to do now, at this point, I'm going to make I'll put some eyebrows on here. And what I do is I simply, I like to tell my students to make balls and worms. So in this case, I'm making a couple little worms. I wet them. I'm going to stick them on here like this. Make sure they stick into the paper, to the plaster bandage. See that? Sticking it in, shaping it, right? And then I'm going to give these a slight turn down to make him look like he's really worried. He's freaking out about something. So I'll add the eyebrows like that. And then I'll come back with my tool once again, and I'll start adding some lines here that indicate the eyebrows. See that? Very, very, very simple. So let's add a couple of buck teeth to this guy here. See how that looks? A couple of front teeth. You see his mouth open like that? Well, let's add another element here. Put some paper clay inside there. And then we take our tool once again and just score a couple of little lines there, and then make them a couple of teeth sticking out like that. You get a little idea how that's done. See that? Now I got one here where the mouth, I made the different shape of nose, right? I always start with the nose. I should have showed you that. I'll do that right now. So usually when I'm starting out, and I don't know, a lot of times I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. So I kind of improvise. So, okay, what am I going to do with this mask? Well, let's make him a big, fat bubble nose, okay? Bulbous nose, I should say. So I just add the clay, stick it down. One interesting thing, and a fascinating thing, I should say, for me as an artist, when working in my studio, working alone, I love the element of surprise. When I'm just adding clay, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. It happens so fast when I'm modeling. So I just add it, and I just start playing with it, kind of let the clay do what it's going to do. I'm going to indicate the nostrils there with my thumbs. See that? And then I'm going to emphasize it once more here, this part of the nostrils. Take that paper clay out. Okay. All right, let's make up some eyeballs here real quick. I got about a minute and a half for this segment. So I'm going to stick a little clay on here, press it in, round it out. By working with both hands, I can get at least a little bit of a symmetry, and I can measure as I'm going on, as I'm developing the character. But here you can see all it had was an indication of a mouth. It didn't even have a nose. Now it has a quite dominant nose here. Got some eyeballs there. So then I use my tool. I can use this to open up the eyes. Kind of give them a squint. That's the real simple way to do that. Okay, so basically these are some ideas on the beginning of modeling in clay and the materials that I use. And remember that I mentioned the wonderful thing about Plaster Bandage is, and paper clay is when it's dry, the paper clay is dry, you can add the more paper clay, which is phenomenal. You don't have to cover it. You don't have to keep wetting it. All you have to do is make sure that your paper clay is moist when you're using it. When you put it away, cover it up. So I'm going to put a little dimple right here on the chin. And I'm going to just give him a little bit of cheeks here with a little bit, whoop, lost my paper clay in my rush to finish. Okay, there you go. So this is how I do it. Doing both hands at the same time, developing the features, adding or subtracting. Modeling, you add, and when you carve, you subtract. Okay, so there we go, guys. That concludes this part of the modeling. And what I'll do next is I'm going to show you the actual mask that I use. And I'm trying to stop my timer there. Whoop. So thank you. And now I'm going to turn you on to the actual masks. Okay. So, there you go. I have here on the table a collection of masks that I want to talk to you about. Okay, and I wanted to show you. First of all, I'm going to show you the full face mask. Usually we think of the mask as covering the whole face. So I do both, the full face and what I call the half mask. Some people call it the three-quarter mask. But I'm going to show you some of these masks here, and you can see where they're very expressive in themselves, right? They have very definite, very intense expressions of many different emotions. So the mask is one thing. The mask in itself has power. But when we put on the mask, when I put on the mask, I feel that I disappear. Zarco disappears, and the mask character appears in front of my audience. So I let the mask speak for themselves. In this case, it can't speak with its mouth, but it can definitely speak with its body. So you can see where this guy is definitely out to lunch. But the way that I use the body emphasizes that and really brings the character to life and really brings the audience into the performance. Good. Now here's another character. You're going to see his emotion. You could say he's freaking out. He's in a state of awe. He can't figure out what's going on. He's surprised. So the mask, again, has its own character. It's powerful. But what happens when we put it in? What happens to the body? So you can see, we need that body. We need the body relating to the mask and bringing the mask really to life. That's what makes a mask real. One more example of that, of the full face mask, is of course a mask full of anger, right? Freaking out, pissed off. Again, powerful by itself, but when we put it on, yeah, this dude is really, really upset. So it takes that body language to bring the mask to life. Now, the half mask I'm going to introduce with an element of surprise. Hey man, what's up? Hey, how's it going? There's a lot of nice looking people out there in Facebook. I better take a closer look. I knew you were gonna like that one. So that's another way of adding that element of surprise and now adding the voice, because remember, each character has its own voice. I do a lot of different characters. Not all of them are well defined when I start the character. Unless I'm working with a theater company, they say, Zarco, we need an old lady, an old man, a young man. We need someone with one eye or buck teeth. whatever it may be, they'll describe the character to me and tell me what the character is all about. And also, a lot of times, I have the script. But when I'm creating characters, I'm going to do a Native American character based on some my Native American homeboys, especially during the time of the Native American movement AIM. So here's my Native American guy. What you looking at, man? You don't know me. I don't know you. You know nothing about me. You see only what you want to see. A romanticized warrior, a noble Indian chief, or maybe a wise old medicine man. What you don't see is the reality of what I represent. So that's my Native American character. And this is a character that I created. I wanted to do an artist based on, again, a lot of relations that I have, a lot of friends, and kind of being ironic and making fun, but not laughing at, laughing with them. Hola, how are you? My name is Acatl Topiltzin Quetzalcoatl Huitzilopochtli Tezcatlipoca Madre. But you can call me Pepe Pepito. Yes, and I am, of course, I'm an artist, I'm a Chicano artist, and I'm very talented. I know a lot about a lot of things, and many people consider me an expert. I do paintings of Frida Kahlo. I make Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos altars, and I make my own calaquitas. I make papel picado and paper flowers. You can say I'm an all-around Renaissance person today. I can do anything because I am empowered by the wisdom of my ancestors. So thank you very much. Thank you for joining me. Remember, Pepe Pepito, gracias, Clasukamati, bye. So that's Pepe Pepito. This is a character that I haven't performed with yet. I just kind of made the mask spontaneously, but you can see he's a guy with definitely exaggerated features. And so I'm still figuring out this character. And when I put on the mask and I go in front of a mirror, that's when the monologues start coming. That's when they start telling stories. They tell me their stories, not necessarily from my own life experience, but from other people. So here you go, this guy here. Hey man, that's dope. Yeah. Yeah, not much to do around here nowadays. With this quarantine, I spend most of the days in my room playing video games and listening to hip hop, writing my hip hop, my spoken word poetry, so I can make a difference in the world and make this world a better place. So keep an open mind, keep the faith, baby, and yeah, right on. All right, so this is one of my favorite characters. I call him the Viejito. And he, of course, represents the ancestors. And you can see he's all wrinkled up, but he has those lines that were made by the elements of the earth, the wind, the rain, the sun, and his face actually resembles the landscape. So as you can see, not only do I put on the mask, but I also use elements, usually a different shirt or a hat or a wig. So let's do the Viejito. I gotta sit out here for a minute. Hola, ¿cómo están, eh? Hey, thank you very much for coming to visit me today. You know, I'm an old man. I've been around for a long time. Well, I can't even hear too well. I still got one good eye.
Yeah, well, it's hard for me to get around, and so this here quarantine during this time of whatever it's called, the content virus, Dos Equis virus, coronavirus, I don't know, whatever it is, uh, nothing has changed for me. I'm all alone. I don't know why I'm all alone. I wish people would come visit me more often. I have kids and I have grandkids, but uh, they don't seem to care about me anymore. And it's almost as if they're waiting for me to just drop dead. I don't know. Sometimes I feel that way. Maybe I'm wrong, but I like to encourage all you people out there, you folks, you youngsters out there. I know how it is. Yo sé cómo es la cosa. But you have to take care of your abuelitos. You have to take care of the elderly. Híjole, man, me acuerdo cuando yo era un morrito, when I was a little boy, I used to take care of my abuelito and my abuelita too. Híjole, man, they were old. They weren't young and strong like me. They were old and todos acabaditos. And I had to take care of my abuelitos. Why? I had to get them out of bed and I had to wash them myself because they couldn't even take care of themselves. But I didn't even care. I did it. I washed them. I took care of them. I feed them. And I love my grandparents until the day that they died. And I even helped to bury them. I went out and I dug a hole in the ground for my abuelito. And we put my abuelito deep in the ground. And then we got a little, well, he liked to, he liked to eat fish, So we went out and we caught a big catfish. A él le gustaba mucho el catfish. And I cooked up a little catfish for him and gave him some catfish and threw in a little limon, salecito, and some chilito because he really liked chilito. And then I buried my grandfather. And it's been a long time. And I still try to go out and visit the grave of my grandfather, my grandmother, my ancestors, because that's what we do. We visit the graves. We talk with the dead. We ask favors of them and we pray to them and hope they protect us. But the other day I went looking for the grave of my abuelito and I couldn't find it. Why, it was buried underneath a freeway, a parking lot, a shopping center, a golf course. You don't say. It was gone. And I can't find it anymore. So anyway, I know you're probably tired of listening to this viejito rant all over and over again, repeating himself over again. Pero ¿saben qué? Muchas gracias. Thank you very much for visiting with me. Me alegra mucho el corazón. You make my heart happy just to have your attention for a moment and allowing me to speak, to share my palabra. Muchas gracias. Cuídense. Be careful. Remember, take care of yourselves so that you might be better able to take care of your loved ones and your friends and your neighbors. Muchas gracias. Hasta luego.
Okay, so there you go. Those are just a few of the characters. I'll let you look at the mask once again here on the table and get a little idea of the kind of work to do, that as well as taking a look around the studio. Oh, there you go. All right, thank you. Thank you once again, and I hope we have some questions, and I hope I have your answers.
Zarco, thank you so much. That was beautiful. And the viejito just made me want to cry because I love that you're touching on some pieces of history that start to get lost, and we don't get to experience our viejitos the same way that we used to and take care of them the same way. So I like that you touched on that. We do have some questions, so I'm gonna take a couple of questions. And if you're still watching, please send some questions in where I'll still take some if they pop up on here. So I have a question from Mark. And I think, yeah, he's talking about, you were talking about making your masks and you kind of like don't know what's going to happen until you start doing the mask making, and it kind of like takes over. So Mark says in the Yoruba tradition, Santeria practitioners are mounted by a spirit energy and moves through them. Do you feel like that's something that's happening when you're making your masks?
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, there's an element of mystery, as I mentioned before, because a lot of times I go into it, I don't have any idea of what I'm going to do, what the character is going to look like, what expression he's going to have, and I've made peace with that, and it allows me to just get into the creative process and let my fingers play and let my imagination go, and all of a sudden. Within that process, the character appears, the expression appears on the face. And as I develop the facial expressions, uh, somehow stories start coming to me and ideas. I start defining that character, his voice, his accent, his vocabulary. I say his, but I also mean her because I love doing female characters as well. So for me, it's that element of mystery and especially that element of surprise. I love going into my studio knowing that something magical is going to happen.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Um, okay, I also have a question from Elizabeth who is watching, and she says, "I absolutely love your masks. How many years have you been making them? And what inspired you?"
Good question. Good question. Well, as I grew up as in elementary school, junior high school, I envisioned myself to be a sculptor. I wanted to do sculpture. I wanted to do portrait sculpture and monuments. My father was a portrait painter. So I grew up observing him painting portraits of people. And when I first saw him get a piece of paper, blank piece of paper, a stick of charcoal, and start drawing, somehow within that time frame, he captured the personality and likeness of that individual. To me, that was magic at that time in my life. I wanted that magic. I wanted that power. And my father just told me, hey, you want it? Just draw. Draw anything, draw everything, and draw as much as possible. And one of these days, you're going to be able to capture the personality of the person you're drawing. So that's exactly what I did for many, many years. After I graduated from high school, I became involved in the Chicano art movement. At first, as a muralist, started painting murals in inner city neighborhoods, and then was inspired by the poets that I hang out with at that time. Started writing poetry, started playing music. As I mentioned, art was healing our community. It was bringing us together. It was giving us an identity. And so I wanted to experiment and develop as much as I could, as much talent as I possibly could by being inspired by other people. But it wasn't until I went to Mexico to study sculpture that I became captivated and enchanted with the use of masks in the indigenous villages surrounding Mexico City. I was in Mexico City working in a bronze foundry, learning how to do bronze casting, but it was the mask that called my attention, especially when I went to the Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City and saw the Olmec masks and the Totonaca masks that were full of these amazing expressions of human emotion. And it was at that moment that I realized these are my roots. This is my past. These are the standards, are the lessons, are the style left to me in order to emulate as an artist. So it was at that point that I began experimenting with masks, making masks. And it was at that point that I became involved with other people in Mexico who shared my love of mask making. Other mask makers from the state of Guerrero, from the state of Morelos, from Michoacan. Much later, I returned to my roots here in Arizona, the Yaqui roots of this land, where there's a great tradition in mask making, and sort of became a part of that community as well. And because of this experience, I was able to travel almost all around the world making masks with native mask makers. So that's how it happened in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I love how you're talking about the masks. They're kind of like their own entities, right? Like you put them on and they have all these developments behind them, right? Like
Exactly.
You're just like the
go-between.
Yeah, the go-between for these
Yeah.
masks who are alive on their own and have their own lives. Mark asks, where did you learn the physicality of mask performance?
Good question. I actually learned the physicality at a very young age from the native ceremonies that take place here in the valley, particularly the Yaqui Easter celebration, where masks are used extensively. I mean, hundreds of masks appear during these celebrations. But the most fascinating is the dance of the deer dance, the dance of the venado, el mazo, as the Yaquis call him. And this is when a young man, an old man, puts on the head of a deer and reenacts the life of the deer, the life as well as the death of a deer who is being hunted by hunters. When I saw that as a young man, I remember seeing a man with a deer head on him. But as he began to dance to the music created by the musicians, in my mind, it transformed the whole place. It transformed me. He became a deer. I saw a man transform himself into a deer in front of my eyes. And I never, ever forgot that. And I remembered that when I went to Mexico and became involved with a group of theater artists called Los Mascarones. And I watched them perform with masks. Much earlier, I saw Teatro Campesino also perform with masks in the Bay Area. So I had some experience observing theater and watched how these masks were brought to life. So I didn't go to any school, but I went to a lot of Chicano theater performances. And I guess you can say that's where I picked up the whole physicality of the masking process.
Great. I have one more question for you, Zarco, before we wrap everything up. It's about the invisible masks that you showed us today that really kind of like take on your whole head and body. And are they something that you developed yourself, or are they inspired by a specific kind of mask from another part of the world?
Another great question. After I had worked a long time in Mexico, throughout Mexico, I went to Japan and spent a year in Japan carving full face masks in Japan with very intense emotions, features. But it wasn't until I went to Bali that I discovered the half mask or the 3/4 mask, where the mouth is free and the eyes, in a sense, are free as well. So we can see the eyes. And when the Balinese, when they put on the mask, they tell stories and they change their voice and their physicality. So that's what introduced me to that element of the mask as being able to speak. When that happened, I realized the awesome potential the mask had to communicate ideas, right? And through storytelling, because now the mask had a voice, not only a physical voice, but an actual voice. It was at that time that I started adding things like teeth to the mask. I hadn't seen teeth that actually went into the mouth. And when I do that and I put on the mask,
Well, now the mask is more than just part of my face. As you can see, it's actually part of my skull because you could see my. I was going to say you could see my teeth. If you want to call these jagged little things here teeth, but it's all I got. So anyway, that's how it works. So now I'm the old man. I'm the viejito. ¿Y dónde está el Zarco?
so there you go.
Awesome.
Viejito.
The best. Thank you so much, Zarco. It's been so entertaining. It's always awesome to see all these different characters and everybody that you develop and we get to hang out with for a little bit. So thank you so much. We appreciate you so much. I want to give a quick shout out to our people working behind the scenes that help make all this happen. Adam Cooper Teran is our technical director, and he's getting us on and off and putting music in there. And Sunshine Serta is our camera person for Zarco up in Mesa. And I also just want to thank everybody that tuned in again today to watch the show. Happy birthday, Mom. My mom's watching, so happy birthday. And we have one more episode. So we're so excited to bring you back one more time in July, Zarco. And it'll be same time, same place. It'll be on Wednesday, July 8th.
Yes. And I mentioned I'm going to be featuring some art, giant puppets that I'm making for Borderlands. So you're going to be able to preview those giant puppets, the heads. And I want to turn you on to that. And I'm really excited once again to work with Borderlands. Muchas gracias. Thank you guys very much. Be well, stay safe. And we're making the world a better place. You got to believe that. Keep hope alive. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Check out our website for all the events coming up at borderlandstheater.org. And also, if you do want to make a donation, it's on Venmo at Borderlands Theater. Thank you so much, Zarco, and everybody that helped. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.